Hi, this is Stuart Davis. You're listening. No, hold on. Back it up. You're not. Stuart Davis. You're listening to the Solopreneur. What is it? It's a podcast.
Hour.
It's a radio show. It's a missile. And it's aimed for your heart. All right, one more. It's a podcast, right?
Or show. Yeah, the Solopreneur Hour is fine.
I don't have to say what format you're in.
Yeah, they're already there. They figured that part out. They did the math on that.
Hi, this is Stuart Davis. You're listening to the Solopreneur podcast, and that's why we're friends.
You're so close. You just forgot the hour.
Solopreneur Hour.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. Hi, it's Stuart Davis. You're listening to the Solopreneur Hour, and that's why we're friends.
All right, so there we go. Now we're talking.
Bam, 5 tries, I'm in.
5 try Charlie. Welcome.
5 times Charlie.
The Solopreneur Hour podcast. Job security for the unemployable. It's the Solopreneur Hour podcast with Michael O'Neill.
Welcome to the Solopreneur Hour podcast,
where every episode we co-host with the best and brightest solopreneurs in the land. And now your host, Michael O'Neill.
Like in character.
Yeah, I can settle into like a redneck voice for like 30 minutes, and I surprise myself with the things that I'm able to come up with. It's amazing.
Well, I look forward to doing the first half. And
maybe I will, because I just hit record. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to episode 570 of the Solopreneur Hour. How are you? How are things? This episode is brought to you by HostGator. Get 50% off your entire hosting package by using the promo code SOLO50 at checkout. A few weeks ago, I interviewed Mr. Noah Kagan, who he and I had been crossing paths many, many years, and we'd never gotten a chance to chat. So it was really cool. And after we were done, he was like, dude, that was great. You know, I've done a zillion interviews, and that one was really fun. And I said, as I always do, to respond to that, A, I hope you'll share it when it comes out. And B, do you know anybody else you think is really cool that I should talk to? And he instantly fired over an intro to this gentleman. To be honest, I didn't know a ton about. Apparently, we didn't know a lot about each other until a couple weeks ago. So he created a company called Backlinko, and as anybody in the SEO world knows, backlinks are golden. For instance, if Entrepreneur Magazine links to your website, that has got a lot of link juice, and that will help your SEO rankings. Anyway, he's on to talk a bit about that, a little bit about growing your YouTube channel, which is something I'm very interested in right at the moment. His name is Mr. Brian Dean. What's up, Brian?
Hey, Michael. Good to be here.
Dude, it's great to have you, and again, I'm terribly disappointed that you're not German. So what's up with that?
Well, we'll have to get past that. We got another hour, so we should just move past that. I
say that for context that your Skype came up Berlin, Germany, and it was like, oh, I didn't realize that he was a German dude. But I was so excited because I've been doing this car restoration for the last week and a half. And I thought we would be able to dig in and talk, vintage Porsche, because you're in Germany and you're like, oh yeah, my grandfather had 17 of them, but that wasn't probably the case. Alas.
No, he only had 15.
Just 15.
But we can still talk about it.
Where did you come from in the States?
Pawtucket, Rhode Island.
Really? What's that like?
Yep. Well, the nickname is the Bucket, so that gives you a good idea.
Oh, you said Nantucket, or you said Pawtucket?
No, Pawtucket.
Scum Bucket from Nantucket. That was a punk song in the 80s.
Really? It could also
have been Pawtucket.
Yeah, it's not worthy of being in a song, probably. I mean, it's not that bad, but it's just kind of a nowhere place.
I found it to be. I was in Rhode Island for the first time a couple months ago, and it was lovely. It was a lovely little place. And
hey, Rhode Island's got its strong points, man. Especially Providence. It's nice.
That's where I was. What was growing up in Rhode Island like?
I don't know. I lived in kind of like a inner city / suburb kind of environment. In Rhode Island, the economy was very much based back in the day on factories. It was like one of the last places in the States where people would work in factories to make jewelry. And basically everyone's parents and everyone's parents' parents at least spent some time working in a factory or knew someone that did. It was a big part of the economy. And when I was growing up, that was gone or already moved or or moving out, and it hadn't really developed a replacement industry, or it still hasn't actually. So growing up, it was good, but it was definitely not the place for like a lot of ballers were hanging out.
Right.
It's not like the hub of like, hey, I made it, I'm going to go to Rhode Island.
No, right. But what was being a kid like there? What was it? Did you have space? Were you running around in the woods? What was the deal?
I would call it very suburban.
Okay.
So there was like a patch of woods that, of course, like as a little boy, we all gravitated to, and there were some, wooden boards lying around with snakes would hang out underneath. So that was like my favorite pastime was to go catch snakes. It sounds super rural, but it was like, it was like a patch of land. It's now a couple houses.
Right.
So it gives you an idea of how big it was. But when you're a kid, you're 8, that patch of land is like this forest of adventure. You find garbage and you're like, wow, what was this, carburetor from back in the day? And you lift it up and there's like a salamander underneath and it blows your mind. So I actually had a really good childhood there.
That's fun. Yeah, I was in Ohio, until I was 12. So we had tons of space and land and ran around a lot and, got ticks on us and the whole bit. But it's there's something romantic about growing up in a very kind of small town atmosphere, and at least having that for reference as you go through life, I think.
Was it small town for you in Ohio?
Mine was super small town. And we had, acreages of land and, I had one neighbor that was a best friend, in between us, we had 9 acres. So,
wow.
Yeah. And it was just, we were running around and then we had the woods everywhere and that was cool. There was literally a corner store and a lot of corn and things like that. So, yeah, it was cool, but it was different too. I think I'm probably older than you. So this was the, late 70s, early 80s. So things were still so much simpler, It reminded me a bit of
great, man, by the way, not to get off topic, but I thought we're pretty much the same age.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm 45. Yeah, I'm 45. Hanging in there.
Nice.
I spent some time in Belgium a few months. And Belgium reminded me of the U.S. in the 80s a little bit. There's just a simplicity to it. And you've been traveling, you've been backpacking around for, you said, a couple years?
I was, yeah. A couple years ago, I went to Asia to backpack around.
Oh,
it was one of those, I started in Thailand. I ended up staying in Asia for 2 years.
Wow.
I wanted to just pop over there, kind of like, I never really left the country before then. I was probably I think I was like 27. And I went to Canada a couple times. We drove up with my parents to like Toronto and Montreal. But that was about it in terms of, exotic places. And Montreal, because they speak French, was like ridiculously exotic as a kid from Rhode Island. Going there was amazing. But other than that, I'd never really experienced anything outside of the States. So I had a girlfriend who at the time, whose dad was Thai, and he had a place we could stay. So one day we basically spontaneously decided to go there. And I loved it, and I just ended up backpacking around, living in different places, on the way for 2 years. It was awesome.
Wow. And so what were you doing right before that?
I was freelance writing.
Like copywriting stuff? SEO?
Yep, copywriting. Yeah, some SEO articles, mostly like sales letters. Those long sales letters that are, you think, who the hell reads this? Who the hell writes this?
Yeah.
That was me.
Really? Because I need that. You're hired.
I'm retired from that. That's
a tough
a great life.
Yeah, but that's one of those things where you can write your own ticket, I think.
Yeah, it's great. It has a great thing, man. If you want to like backpack around and be a bum, it's perfect. And that's how I was able to fuel those 2 years was I was writing for clients. And, they wouldn't always have a project for me, and times would be slow, and then it hit the road. And then when I needed to make some money, I'd stop in a city. Like I lived in Hong Kong, I lived in Phnom Penh in Cambodia. I would just, email the client, say I'm available, or find some new ones, and then start writing.
Right.
But I quickly kind of learned, like you said, the writing thing, it has its pros, and that's I just described pretty much the only pro, and the rest are cons. Like, low pay, not a lot of respect, like variable income, hard to scale. Like it just has so many bad things. Right. And I realized this whole SEO thing, that was the golden ticket. That was the dream, because you could rank a bunch of sites in Google and they would make money from AdSense and you wouldn't really even have to work. I was one of those people that was obsessed with passive income and all that sort of thing. So that's how I actually learned about SEO, was freelance writing. I was getting frustrated with it, and I built all these shady websites on the side that were ranking with Black Hat SEO.
What is that? Tell me about what that means. Well, I know what it means, but tell people what that means.
Well, there's basically two ways to do SEO, right? To rank your site in Google. One is called white hat, and one is called black hat. Right. And there's 1,000 definitions of which is which, but the best one I heard is basically white hat is where you wouldn't mind being like, here Google, here's what I did to optimize my site, and show them.
Right.
Black hat's like, this is you're not really comfortable showing them what you did because you did something shady.
Right. That
and I was
move
obsessed
where
with black hat.
You've got a white background and then you use white text and it's like giant blocks of keywords.
Exactly. Stuff like that. Or you buy links from other people or you spam other sites with blog comment links. I was doing all that stuff back in the day. Did it work? It actually worked back in the day.
Yeah, I was going to say, it worked probably 2009 through 2011, I would imagine.
That was exactly the time. Dude, I left in 2009. Yeah. 2011, I was like pretty much wiped out multiple times at that point. I had so many ups and downs. I felt like a stock trader. Right. I'd be like, I have so many vivid memories of like opening my laptop in fear, going backpacking somewhere, going back to the hostel, opening my laptop in like literal sweat. Right. Thinking, am I going to go to zero today?
Are they going to nail me today?
Yeah, because I knew it was a matter of time.
Well, and then Penguin and Panda came out, and that was that. So, for the most part, right?
Yeah, Penguin was the last kind of knockout punch for me. I had got a couple, manual penalties, a few mystery penalties. Panda totally wiped me out. Started from scratch, and then Penguin totally wiped me out. April 24, 2012. Totally vivid memory. Yeah. Man, it was like D-Day. It was actually one of the best things that ever happened to me, honestly, as crazy as it sounds. And at the time, I remember I was in Spain. So after I left Asia, I started backpacking in Europe, and I was in Spain. And I remember going to see Alhambra, which is this like old palace. I don't know if you've been to the south of Spain.
No.
And came back to my hostel, and at that point I was actually pretty cocky. I remember opening my laptop, and that whole cold sweat thing had gone because it was about a year since Panda. Right. And I was like, well, now I figured it out. Like I'm one step ahead of those idiots at Google, right? Not realizing there's like brilliant people working there and I'm some backpacking loser. So I opened up my laptop, and of course, it was like a total cliff. Like my traffic, revenue, affiliate marketing revenue, all that stuff was like to zero basically. Wow. And I realized pretty quickly like I could, continue to live this trying to stay one step ahead of Google, or I could try to do things right for once and like go the white hat route and actually try it. Right. And I did. That summer, I decided to start my first real site that, I would show Google what I was doing, that sort of white hat SEO, and it actually worked really well.
Hold on. Let me pause you for 1 second because for the people that are uninitiated, nothing we just said for 3 minutes made any sense. So I will just give a quick little Cliff's Notes. We're talking about search engine optimization. This is how people find your website online. And what happened was Google has a specific algorithm. They don't tell you what it is. So you don't really know how to optimize your website so you get ranked so that when you search for something online, your website comes up first, right? That's a big deal. And when someone walks into an SEO person, just goes, oh, yeah, I want to be number one on Google. You're like, oh, yeah, that's easy. What they did is for people like Brian that had figured out the system and they were working their way around it, they updated their algorithm, and that just literally knocked their traffic off the map. Like, so people weren't visiting the website anymore. Then they adjusted. Then they did it again like a year later. So that's what Penguin and Panda, those are the two updates. That's the nicknames of those things. Anyway, so go on. I digress.
That's pretty much it. And the big difference between the two, at least from my point of view as a black hat guy, was that Panda really targeted low quality content on a site, which is amazing that they were able to do that with an algorithm. Especially, dude, it's like 10 years ago. They're able to basically or 6 years ago, they're able to read content with an algorithm and understand like this is good or this is bad. Right. And the bad sites, which are all mine, I once had 150 different one-page websites all around a keyword. Yeah, like the exact match keyword was in the domain. That was huge back then.
That was a thing. That was totally a thing. So you decided to go white hat, and then what happens?
So I built this. It's also going to be monetized with affiliate revenue. And I built a white hat site, and it just blew up. It started to rank for keywords super fast.
And what was the
part of it was in the personal finance space. I ended up selling it.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, it started to do well for the first time with White Hat. I couldn't believe it. I would build write good content for the site that was actually helpful. I would reach out to other site owners and get links. And I was like blown away that this was happening. I also had a client at the time. I had some SEO clients on the side, and basically 2 at this point. And one of them was like, hey, I don't want to do any buying links anymore because of Penguin. He read about it too. And because I was doing that for him. And he said, what if we did like an infographic? I've heard these things called infographics are really cool. Like, keep this in mind, this is 2012. So infographics were still kind of new. They're still cool, actually. There's ways to market them. But back then, it was like any infographic was automatically kind of cool. Right. So I built one for him. And this one was all about how the dollar is losing value because of inflation. This client sold gold.
Well, gold something. All right, Brian. This is what happens when you Skype Germany. We were so good. Where'd he go? Maybe I should do my HostGator reader right now while we're waiting. Anyway, I hope you guys aren't confused by this, but it's fascinating to me because SEO is one of those things that I think everyone kind of forgot about it when social media came along. So I think if it's still a thing and there's still things we can do, then it's a good thing, I think it's a good thing. So it's cool to hear someone like this who came from a writing background and really has evolved with the platform. So let's see if we can get him back. Or if maybe something happened. Maybe a missile just hit Germany or something. Who knows?
So this client was like, hey, I'm sick of all this buying links. That's basically all I was doing for him, was like buying links. And he read about Penguin and realized that was dangerous to do. So he's like, why don't we build an infographic? And at that point, I had heard infographics. They're kind of big at the time. So I decided to give it a try. And I built this infographic for him that was all about why the dollar is losing value. And I realized that his clients were all like people that bought gold and silver bullion. They're kind of like the prepper community. They felt like the New World Order is going to like take down the economy, all that stuff. Right. So this angle really appealed to them. And I created this infographic and I started to do outreach the same way I was doing for my own site, like emailing sites. Like we reached out to Zero Hedge, got placement on there, on the Christian Post, and just emailed them, say, hey, we have the infographic, do you want to share it? And they did. And it was blown away at like how when you email people and you're not spamming, you're not pushy, they'll actually link to you if you have something of value to provide.
And that's when I was like, wow. How do you do what's the protocol for doing that? So you created the infographic, you've got it, it's a PDF or whatever it is. And then what do you do? What's the deal?
Well, there's one strategy that I like that I developed for this client that while I was doing this is called guestographics. Okay. And basically you combine guest posting and infographics. So, for example, Michael, let's say I had a thing about, statistics about solopreneurs and how many there are, how much they make, how many hours they work, like, do they work in the home office or co-working spaces? I had some cool stuff that you might be interested in as someone who's interested in this topic. So I have kind of 2 routes I could take if I want you to share the infographic on your site. One is just being like, hey, Michael, I have this infographic. Will you please share it? Right. I mean, if you email 100 people, you might actually get some links that way and some shares. But obviously, a better would be like, hey, Michael, I know you're interested in this topic. I produce an infographic on this topic. If you want to share it on your site, I'll be happy to write a unique introduction to go along with it. Or I have another piece of data that I didn't share in the infographic, and I'll be happy to share it with your audience as part of the intro. So it's like a value add. Because right now, if I just send you, like you said, Michael, I send you a PDF or the image, it's work for you to do. You have to upload the image to your site. You have to come up. You can't just post an image. You have to write about it and think about it, and you're busy. So if I do that work for you and actually add value, you're going to be much more likely to say yeah.
I think for any freelance designer, that would be a great way to get yourself out there. And absolutely. Even one more to add on, it's like you could give away a like an opt-in, like some kind of opt-in that they could use in addition to it for the bonus content. And then they've got like a unique post with a unique opt-in that they could then use to grow their mailing list as well. So that would be cool.
Yeah, definitely. If you see they're interested, there's all different ways to it depends on the person. And that's the thing about outreach that I learned is that, yeah, you can, spam 100 people with the same message, but like you said, the more you personalize it, the better. So, let's say another outreach link building strategy that I like is to update old content that's out of date. So you find a piece of content that's a little out of date, you email the person, say, hey, I noticed you have this piece of content, you published it a couple of years ago, this and that has changed, I'm happy to update it for you. And a lot of times if they say yes and then you update it, they'll include a link to say thank you to whoever for doing this. So it's definitely a lot of work, but that's how it is.
There was I had a dude on a few months ago, and I thought this was a pretty interesting strategy. And for me, it kind of walked the line between black hat and white hat a little bit, but he would find opportunity somewhere. So let's say you want to write about being a solopreneur, and he would send them a link to a couple of different blog posts that he liked. He would take those blog posts, then he would go to iWriter.com, and he would say, go to these two blog posts and write me a unique story summarizing the data from both. And then they would write literally a totally unique story on it, and then that's what he would post on his website. I thought that was interesting. I thought it's an interesting way to outsource it. Yeah, it was like he was sort of, he would have them watch a video and then summarize the video, like somebody else's video, and then just write a whole story on it. I'm like, that's interesting, and I get it, but it's really walking the line for me.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that approach. I mean, I don't have any moral issues because everyone steals from everyone. Let's face it. That's not the issue. It's more that, if you want to stand out with content, your content has to be amazing.
Right.
And to just be like, hey, I'm going to hire some random person to summarize someone else's stuff, it's probably not going to do well in SEO because people aren't going to link to it, obviously, because there's nothing special about it. And then if people interact with it, which is huge right now in Google, how people interact with your site in the search results, they're going to see it, be like, I've read this before, it's mediocre, and they're going to hit their back button, and Google keeps track of that stuff. So, I don't have any, whatever. That's the approach. But the problem is, at the end of the day, take a step back and look at your site. If it's full of that stuff, why would it rank for anything?
Right, exactly. So once again, Backlinko, BACKLINKO on Twitter and backlinko.com. Here's the question I've had for a few years. When everything got redirected and the Penguin and Panda updates came and all the sort of I could buy traffic ideas kind of went out the window, everything kind of went to social media. Everything has really been heavy on social media. I kept wondering, does SEO matter? And I would love to hear your take on that. And and if it does, how do we integrate it as independents, as solopreneurs?
My take is more does social media matter from a point of view of traffic potential and traffic quality. So, if you look at your own Google Analytics and just see how people interact with your site and how many people convert from different places, it's super rare that social media is the best channel in terms of conversions. Very, very rare. Because, how people find you on social is usually they're bored at some level, right? They're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, they're on Pinterest, just kind of checking it out, seeing what's up. They see something from you or their friend shared something and they go to your site and then they might convert. But at that moment, they're not really that passionate or interested necessarily in that topic versus searching for it in Google. The mindset of that person, it could be the same person, just at a different point. The mindset of the person searching is just night and day. And that's why the economics of it pan out because it's much more expensive to buy a click on Google than Facebook. For the same person, 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, 100 times in some cases. It's just really expensive to buy a click from Google AdWords in the Google search results because people are just worth a lot more.
Yeah.
And on Facebook, they're not worth that much. That's why anyone and their mom can and are advertising on Facebook because it's so cheap. But the traffic isn't worth nearly as much. And also the ceiling in terms of how much traffic you can get is much lower because at Google, it's basically unlimited. If you can rank number one for a bunch of keywords, you're going to have more traffic than you know what to do with. And on social, it's really tough to get that much traffic where you say, hey, we're really reliant on I haven't heard many people say that most of our traffic comes from Facebook organic or Twitter organic. It's pretty rare because it's super tough to get to that point.
Does it is there low hanging fruit in terms of SEO and what we can do ourselves?
Yeah, there's definitely some. I mean, everyone has the generic advice create great content, build relationships with people, and there's something to that. And besides the fact that the advice is generic, it does take a long time to do that stuff. There's a few quick wins that I recommend right off the bat that most sites do.
Yeah.
The first is to prune your site of what I call dead weight pages. This is something that made a huge difference for me when I was building websites when I started doing white hat and having clients and doing white hat stuff for them. And also I helped Proven.com increase their traffic by 75%, mostly just by deleting dead weight pages on their site. It's a case study about on my blog.
How do you know a page is dead weight?
It's somewhat subjective, but there are some objective things to take into account. So, for example, in the case of Proven.com, they're a job board, an online job board. And they had people posting job listings on there, and then the job would get filled, and the job listing would just stay on the site.
Okay.
They had thousands of those. Also, search results are getting indexed. So when people search for a keyword and, it was Proven.com/whatever with the search results, for some reason, those pages were getting created, adding to their sitemap. Google was finding them and adding to the index. So their site was super bloated with all this stuff that wasn't really adding value, and it was hurting their traffic. So when they deleted all those pages, partially subjective, looking at it and say, okay, this doesn't really make sense to have, but partially objective and looking at their analytics and saying, hey, no one's visiting these pages.
Right.
This page got one visitor in the last month. It doesn't make any sense to have it anyway, so let's delete it. So if you combine those two things, you can usually prune quite a bit of pages. And from my experience, that's the number one thing sites can do to improve their organic traffic. And to give you an idea of how I'm big on this, and Backlinko only has about 50 index pages in Google, give or take, depending on this and that, about 50 pages, and it gets 180,000 unique visitors a month.
Wow.
So if you prune it down and your pages are obviously good, it can make a difference. It's not a magic bullet, obviously. If you don't have any links pointing to your site, pruning pages isn't going to do much. And if the pages that remain still suck, it's not going to do anything. But that's something that's pretty easy and can make a big difference in your traffic.
Anything if you're just beginning, you don't have a lot of content yet, so you're just kind of creating soon?
Yeah, the first thing I would do is focus on creating one huge piece of content that's going to stand out and be a pillar for you.
Okay.
It puts your site on the map in terms of content marketing stuff, but also in the eyes of Google. And this is something
a strategy around it, about choosing what to write about?
If you have something in mind, you can roll with it, but I prefer to use something called the skyscraper technique.
Okay.
To create it. And basically what it is you look for a keyword that you want to rank for. So let's say it's solopreneur. You're okay, this is a keyword that my target customers, my target audience searches for, and I want to create something that'll rank for that keyword. So what you do is you just Google the keyword and you look at the top 10 results and you say, what do these top 10 results have in common and why are they ranking on the first page? And specifically focus on the top 3. And usually, in a lot of cases, the best sort of bubbles to the top because Google's good at ranking content now. It's not like back when I was gaming them and random people like me were able to rank. You have to actually create something good to rank. So if the top 3 have something, you basically take what worked. Obviously, it worked as ranking number 1, and then make it better. So say the tips is 10 tips for productivity tips for solopreneurs. Then you create 50 tips for solopreneurs. You just take what's already worked and make it much better. That way you have a foundation of something that works. So you don't have to just come up with an idea, and you have something based on a proven model, and now you have the best thing on that topic.
Do you have is that still a thing where you have blank number, of blank, and it always tends to do better? 10 ways to do this, or 5 ways to do this, or 7 hacks for blah. Do those posts still rank really well?
Not really. They're a little played out, as you probably know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It depends on how you approach it. It's one of those things where it's not a hack that works anymore, but there's still something to list posts because BuzzSumo last year did a study of 1 million articles to see which articles got the most links and social shares, and they found that actually list posts did better than any other content format.
All right, so
better than videos, better than
something.
infographics.
Yeah.
But it's it's not like back in the day you could do like 7 tips for writing better and people would go crazy. Like,
Right.
It's just people have seen it before. So there's 2 strategies with list posts that I like to take. One is just to make the number just insane. Like I have a post on my site that's 201 SEO tips. So you have to just go crazy with the number and list a bunch.
Right.
And the other is to post like a few, like 15 or 17 or 20, but have a lot of meat under each item.
Okay.
So I call it the expanded list post. So instead of just briefly saying, like, if it's podcasting tips, if just like get this microphone or some tips for finding guests, you would actually give like a step-by-step process 17 times within each tip. Like each tip would have a step-by-step.
Right.
And that works a lot better because there's a lot more meat in that post, even though it's only 17 tips.
Huh. I was featured on a list post today.
Oh, cool. What was it?
It was, let's see what the title is. It says top 50 social media influencers of 2017.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, congrats. That's legit.
I think so. I don't know. It was, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it is, but.
Well, you're
I don't know
biased, obviously. But
I don't know if
I'm
I feel like. I don't know if I feel like a top 50 social media influencer, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
That's cool.
It's probably written by someone's grandma. No, it's not. It was actually written by my buddy Joel Comm. You know Joel Comm. Do you know Joel Comm?
I know. I don't know him personally, but I know him.
It was his, but that was cool, and that was that was kind of sweet. Well, that's really interesting. It's to me that the SEO thing was always one of those things where I thought maybe I'll go back and fix it someday, but. Especially in the podcast world, every one of these episodes has show notes, and every set of show notes is a blog post. So, in my mind, if I, ideally, whoever does my show notes could be listening to this show and then write some amazing article about it that was all SEO friendly, but I'm not quite there yet. If you're out there in listener land and you are that person, please reach out to me.
Yeah, that'd be cool. It's tough to scale that because you have 570 episodes.
That's right.
That's a job. Like that is a lot of work. But I think there's definitely some value if you want to. If SEO is important to you, I mean, for podcasting, maybe it's not as big of a deal. I don't know. You know more about it than me.
Yeah, I don't know if it is or not. I do know that to do SEO, everybody, you need a website, and to get a website, you want to go to hostgator.com. Yeah, I did that. They'll even give you some Google AdWords credit for like $100, but they have 24/7, 365 support. They got one-click WordPress installs. Are you a fan of WordPress, Brian?
Huge fan.
Huge fan, right? And do you have any plugins that you like on WordPress that are good SEO-friendly plugins?
Yeah, the Yoast plugin is good.
Yeah, that's the one I use too, Yoast SEO. And look, one click, you install your WordPress site, you fire up the Yoast SEO, which if I'm recalling correctly, that's the one that gives you kind of percentage rankings of how well your page will rank, right? Isn't that what the one? It says you need like an H1 and then, all that stuff.
It does help you with that stuff. Yep.
Yeah, so it's a really good beginner way to do it. So get yourself an account on hostgator.com. I have one of their WordPress accounts, obviously. One click, done deal. Again, 24/7, 365 support. They got cloud hosting, which is up there in the old clouds. It's go twice as fast as regular old commoner hosting. And anyway, Solo50 at checkout gets you 50% off your entire web hosting order. Solo50 at checkout gets your entire web hosting order at HostGator.com. So once again, thanks to HostGator for sponsoring this episode. So Brian, I realized a few weeks ago that when I consume a show of some sort, right now it is, if I had to rank the order of time spent on, me viewing something, it's in third place, probably Netflix or HBO Go, depending on like what the show is. Second is me downloading something that I'm probably not supposed to. And then first is YouTube by a mile.
Really?
By a mile.
What are you watching on?
Dude,
More
I
than
watch
Netflix.
I am between the drumming videos and the car videos or TV shows or whatever. Like there's people are doing incredibly well produced shows now on YouTube, and if I could watch Mighty Car Mods every day, I can't because they're not on. They will be soon, but I'm on YouTube more than anything, and I'm in the process personally of creating. I mean, I have a little YouTube channel for the show, but I have a little side gig for this car that I'm restoring, and I'm going to be starting a YouTube channel of kind of tutorials, and I'm kind of working on the intro video and stuff right now. But that's a thing you've gotten into lately is helping people grow their YouTube channels, and I'm really curious about how that all came to be.
Well, yeah. Well, like most people with YouTube, how it came to be was I heard of YouTube, like you were watching it. I was like, man, YouTube's cool. I bet I should market on here. And then everything you read is about video for marketing, right? Content marketing especially. You need to be video this, video that. And out of guilt, you're like, man, I should start my YouTube channel. Now, it sounds like it's more of a labor of love, which is great. But for most people, it's kind of like, well, I guess video is the big thing. I should try it. Yeah. And they post 3 videos on their channel, and it doesn't work.
Which I don't get. I don't agree with, by the way. I don't agree with that mentality of like, everyone says we should be on YouTube, so I'll go on YouTube. My opinion on that is that you should go on whatever platform is most comfortable for you. If it happens to be YouTube, then let's grow that YouTube channel. But if you're not comfortable in front of a camera and you're not very techie at all, there's a little bit of techie stuff, maybe YouTube's not your thing. Anyway, you go on.
Yeah, that's good advice, actually. I mean, but I'm saying that's why I did it at first. I ended up learning that video is actually really fun and great. But at the time, I did it, like you said, out of that sense. I did it more of a sense of the opportunities here, and there is a lot of opportunity on YouTube. Like you said, that's the number one thing you watch, which is crazy because Netflix and HBO Go. I mean, basically YouTube is like, hey, we're more entertaining like Game of Thrones and almost every movie ever on either of if you combine Netflix and HBO Go, and you're still like, nah, I'd rather watch YouTube.
Yeah,
that's pretty crazy.
I've seen. Let's be clear. If Game of Thrones is on, I'm not on YouTube.
Okay, but other than that, it sounds like.
But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I've seen all the stuff I wanted to see. And I'm ready to.
Yeah, I've seen Highlander and Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, I've seen all the classics.
Stuff.
Yeah, I've seen all the classics. So.
Yeah. So how I got on it was that sort of opportunity idea, and I posted 3 videos. I mean, they're good, but they weren't great. I didn't know what I was doing. Like anything you do for the first time, I'm sure episodes 1, 2, and 3 of this podcast are completely different than now.
Well, or maybe not. Maybe I was pretty awesome at the beginning, but it's cool.
No, but maybe your mic wasn't awesome or something.
That's right. Yeah. That's good. Yes, I agree though. Yes, and.
Yes, yes, but.
Yeah, sometimes when you're at the beginning, it's a bit of a train wreck. That's true.
And there's nothing wrong with that, man. You got to start somewhere.
That's right. Imperfect
and it's
action.
True on YouTube. So yeah, I got into it. I posted my 3 videos like everybody else. It didn't work, so I gave up. And I especially was discouraged because my videos actually got a semi-decent amount of views because I emailed them to my email list. So it got them some views and traction, which helped them YouTube show them to more people.
Right.
So I had a little bit of an advantage over most fresh YouTube channels. But what really discouraged me from YouTube and why I initially walked away was I was like, okay, YouTube's this huge site. I should be getting a ton of traffic because let's say at the time 3,000 people a month were viewing my videos. I don't remember what it was. So I figured, well, some of those are going to click on the links in my description to my site or on my channel, and they're going to come over. And when I looked at my Google Analytics, it was like 2.
right.
Man, YouTube sucks.
So there's not a lot of conversion. Yeah.
Like nobody. And I was like, man, YouTube's lame. Like it's, maybe it's good if you're a YouTuber and you want to be a pro YouTuber, but for like a business that wants to market there, it doesn't make any sense. And then a few months later, I launched one of my online courses. And when I do that, I have a welcome survey for everyone that enrolls in the course. And I say, why did you invest? Like, what made you decide to buy it? And so many people were saying videos. I watched your videos and I found them really helpful, and I felt like I knew you a little bit. And I was like, videos? Like, where do I even have videos? Yeah, and I looked at my YouTube channel. I was like, man, maybe they're finding me from that. So then I decided to, in my autoresponder sequence, ask people what they're struggling with, like, when they sign up. And a lot of people, in addition to that, were also mentioning where they found me. because people like to tell their little story,
Sure,
right? Like I was
sure.
Googling for whatever, and a lot of people are like, I watched your videos on YouTube, and I was like, damn, these people are actually like, how are they finding me on YouTube? But they're mysteriously jumping from YouTube to my site using some magical system that can't be tracked. And as it turns out, these people were, watching a video and saying, and then typing backlinko into Google or Brian Dean into Google and finding me that way.
Oh,
so they
isn't
didn't
that
show up my
interesting?
Google
Yeah.
Analytics.
Right.
And I guess that's how people on YouTube, that's how they roll. They watch something and they, of course, like anything you want to learn about, you Google it, which makes sense. It's easier than looking for someone's link.
Right.
So that's when I was like, man, maybe I should do more with YouTube. There's something to this. And of course, like the next couple of videos also didn't do that great because I didn't know what I was doing. But eventually, after experimenting, I sort of figured it out. And I was able to grow my YouTube channel really quickly with only a couple videos. The channel only has 14 videos, but it gets like 115,000 views.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's a lot of it is because of SEO. YouTube SEO is super important. Also something I didn't know a lot about. Like my videos weren't that great, but my video SEO wasn't great because I didn't know what I was doing. But I experimented with a lot of stuff, and eventually I came to figure it out. Like literally like a couple months ago is when I first put the pieces together.
Well, I want to hear about those pieces. It's funny too because I've had a drumming channel for a long time, where I just put like drum covers and stuff like that I've done. And some of them are, I'll average maybe a couple thousand views or maybe a few hundred views for most of them. And then I have two of them. One of them says it's a Maroon 5. What's the song? Not Harder to Breathe, but it says something like the best Maroon 5 blank whatever it is cover, and that one has like 15,000. And then then I've got one that is there's a guy named Gavin Harrison who's a kind of a legendary drummer dude, and I wonder if I type this in. I wonder where yeah, it's funny. So if I type in Gavin Harrison paradiddle. So paradiddle is a drum rudiment. It's a form of sticking on the drums. But I made a video that says Gavin Harrison paradiddle diddle drum lick, and that one it's just under 70,000 views.
Wow, that's great.
It's funny.
That's a lot.
It's really funny, but only because I used his name in it. But now, if you type in Gavin Harrison paradiddle, like my video is one of the first ones that pops up on YouTube.
Nice.
It's pretty funny.
So that's the only one you optimize, basically. Like those are the two.
Yeah, those are the only two that really have gotten tons of traffic. So, yeah, they're the ones that are optimized. And this reminds me a bit, like what you're hoping about to share, reminds me a bit of Dan Martell, where, do you know Dan by any chance?
Yep.
He was talking about a dude that helped him with all of his YouTube rankings. That wasn't you by any chance, was it?
No. Okay. I know Dan, but the last time I talked to him was before I figured this stuff out.
Yeah, so he said somebody wrote him out of the blue, and they said, hey, I can increase your YouTube rankings, and I've already done all of your videos. Here they are in a spreadsheet. Like, he gave him the whole spreadsheet of the keywords, the titles, and the descriptions of all the videos, and he just had to plug them in. And Dan did it, and they made like a huge difference. And now he's like, that guy is like irreplaceable to me. I use him all the time. So, by the way, that's how you help an influencer, FYI.
Man, that's like a great example of helping an influencer.
Yeah, you do it already. You're like, it's done. But anyway, so what did you figure out? What were some of the keys to the kingdom?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I figured out was that YouTube search is not a huge part of the view pie. Like, even though we call it YouTube SEO, it's actually more like suggested video SEO. Because, like, if you look at your analytics, even though you rank really highly for that keyword, I would be willing to bet that your total number of views to all your videos, like 50% or 40% plus, come from suggested videos, and only like 10 to 15 come from the actual search.
Okay, interesting.
So this is something I learned because I've had videos that ranked like back in the day. So what I would do with keyword research was actually completely backwards when I first started. So what I would do is I would apply my Google keyword research approach to YouTube. So I'd look for a keyword that didn't have a lot of competition. I'd type in a keyword, and if the videos didn't have a lot of views, I'd be like, great. So for example, one of my first videos, it was one that was actually really good. I optimized it around the keyword advanced SEO, because when I typed it into YouTube, the top 3 results didn't have that many views. And of course, because it wasn't competitive, I ranked number 1 pretty quickly for that keyword.
Okay.
And I was like, great. Problem is, that keyword didn't get me many views, because it didn't show up as a suggested video, because no one else is optimized around that keyword advanced SEO, and that's how you show up as a suggested video if your video is similar to the one that someone's watching. So I eventually learned you actually want to target competitive keywords. And hell with ranking, it doesn't matter. The key is a suggested video. So once I started targeting competitive keywords, yes, I would rank for them eventually, but in the meantime, I'll get tons of views from suggested videos. And for me and most channels, it's 50% plus views are from suggested video.
Interesting.
And only like 10 or 15 are from the actual search. So searching is, if you rank number 1 for your keyword, like I rank number 1 for SEO on YouTube. But even for that video, most of the views still come from suggested video. And obviously that's a super popular term. So it's really all about appearing as a suggested video. The more you can do that, the more views you're going to get. Whether you rank or not, it's just a bonus.
Obviously the key is to become a suggested video. Can you hack that process?
You can hack that process. So the number 1 thing is to look for a keyword that when you search for it, the videos have a lot of views. That way, when you do hack the process, you're showing up next to videos that a lot of people watch. Does that make sense?
Hold on. Let me say it again. Let me see if I can wrap my brain about that.
All right. So first step, you want to, yes, you can hack the process, but like, let's say you show up a suggested video for a video that only 100 people watch a month.
Right.
You're not going to get that much traffic from that. Versus a video that gets 1 million views a month. If you can appear next to that video, you're going to get a ton of views. So that's why you actually want to target keywords and optimize your videos around keywords that are competitive.
So
search for your
I'm trying to
keyword.
think of it like how far down in a niche you can go. Like, for instance, I could say something like, how to change a tire, how to change a car tire, right? That one probably has a lot of views. But I want my people to be like, how to change a Porsche tire or a vintage Porsche tire. Does that matter? Like, you know what I mean? How would I optimize for that, I wonder?
So what I would do is I just search for that version that makes the most sense for your video. So in that sense, like how to change a Porsche tire.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be a lot of views. The only way to know is to search. And if you see that the top 3 videos have a lot of views, just go with that. If not, you can optimize around that one, but also semi-optimize around the generic one, like how to change a car tire, and then appear in the sidebar next to those videos.
All right, so you say let's optimize around. What does that look like? So I look for whatever, how to rebuild a Porsche engine, and one has 1 million views. What do I do with that? I'm looking at that video. Then what happens?
So the next thing is to make your video.
Okay.
So before you optimize it, like that's a mistake I made starting out. I would just create it without thinking of optimization and then optimize it after the fact.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And that was a big mistake I made, because a huge part of getting views from YouTube is actually like how people interact with your video. How long they watch it for is the biggest one, called watch time.
Yeah.
The more total watch time your video has, the better. And not just the percentage that people watch, like the total time, because YouTube wants you to be on YouTube more than Netflix and HBO Go. And if you're watching like a 20-minute tutorial on how to repair a dent on a Porsche and you watch the whole thing, YouTube's like, that's great. Even if the video is 50 minutes, you watch 20 minutes of it, they don't care about the percentage. They just care that you spent 20 minutes on YouTube, and they're going to want to show that video to more people.
Okay.
So that's really important to create your video with this total watch time in mind, and that's why I recommend creating longer videos.
Okay.
In fact, a couple months ago, I partnered with a couple people, and we did the largest YouTube ranking factor study ever. We analyzed 1.3 million YouTube search results, and we found a correlation between longer videos and ranking in YouTube, and also the number of views.
Interesting.
So just because the longer video, it just makes sense. Like, if your video is 10 minutes and people watch half of it, that's 5 minutes. But if it's 1 minute and people watch all of it, that's 1 minute. From your point of view, you're like, hey, that's great. I created a 1 minute video and people watch all of it. But from YouTube's point of view, they're like, well, that's just a minute. We want people to stay on YouTube as long as possible.
Right. I get it. Right.
That's actually the number 1 ranking factor. So even if you get everything else wrong, like if you have people watch a lot of your video and your watch time is really good, you're going to do great.
But and so there's a bit of that mentality that thinks, in and out and get people just to, learn whatever they're going to learn and then go. And you're saying that's not necessarily the best way to rank higher. You actually want, if you're going to do a 15, 20-minute video, that's better than like a minute and a half video.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't create a longer video just for saying like, hey, and I want to make it 20 minutes ahead of time. But it's more like that mentality is probably not true, because I mean, look at the stuff you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah,
I doubt if it's a topic you're interested in, you're like, oh, you're probably excited when it's long.
Yeah,
you watch a long video about
for
something
sure.
you're into, you're like, this is great. 20 minutes on Porsche.
That's right.
On like the history of the Porsche make. Like, this is unbelievable. So,
by the way, you're in Germany, by the way, and if you say Porsche, they'll punch you. So you have to say Porsche.
Porsche, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you watch longer videos or find longer videos, you're gonna actually watch most of the video, and it doesn't matter if it's 1 minute or 20 minutes. You're gonna watch the whole thing, and YouTube knows that. So that whole mentality, like people have short attention spans, that stuff I totally don't buy it. It's the same with text content. The best content on my site is the longest content. If people are interested in the topic and you don't fill it with fluff, it actually provides a ton of value.
It's the same
more
thing with
value than a
podcasting.
short video.
It's the same thing with podcasting. Everyone thinks that you have to have these shows that are less than, 26 minutes long because that's the average commute time. And I'm like, have you never listened to an audiobook? You just stop it because your commute's over? That doesn't make any sense.
Never go back?
Yeah,
Never
that's
go
it.
Back to it.
I keep listening to books for 26 minutes at a time, and then that's it. I can't ever find my way back to the rest of it. Anyway.
I never heard that, but it sounds like advice from people that don't know what they're talking about, which is most advice on marketing, let's face it.
Well, that's true.
It sounds like something people would say. The same thing with blog posts. Like, they can't be more than 400 words or people will click away, which is so not true, man.
Right.
And it's not true with videos. Hey, man, if you can pack it with value, make it long.
Right.
It doesn't have to be long for the sake of long, but it also gives you an opportunity to provide more value in one video. If you're like, hey, how to change a Porsche tire. I almost said Porsche.
You did it.
We've learned together.
You're
going to hang up on me.
We've grown.
If you want to change a Porsche tire, you can do like part 1, part 2, part 3, and break it down and do different videos. But that's a pain in the ass.
Right.
Versus just having one video that has it all in one place. People are going to love that video. YouTube will know it, and they'll show it to more people in the rankings, but also more importantly as a suggested video.
So we have content. So I didn't realize that they were sort of monitoring content in that way. But but I guess they do. But, well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, title and description. Does that still matter?
Yeah, that stuff still matters, but it's not as important as it once was. Or it's more like they're smarter than they were before. So the reason that before, like a lot of people with YouTube SEO, they jump into the title and description, and that's why before that I wanted to go a little bit into like the video about making it a bit longer. And also making sure you say your keyword in the video.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because they can understand the video. They automatically transcribe it.
Oh, so the more you're saying the name, the better. That's well,
I wouldn't go that far. That's the black hat mentality. I wouldn't say it the more you say it.
Okay. But it's just, I didn't realize that that they were listening. That's really cool. That's a little AI.
It is. And if you read the transcription, like go to your videos and look, they're crazy accurate. It's like a person did it. They only mess up brand names. When I say like backlinko, they obviously don't know what that is. But for most things, like I have trouble finding typos. They pretty much understand everything you say in a video.
Siri
if you
doesn't know solopreneur. They don't know that word
I'm not
yet.
surprised. Well, she doesn't know much. Let's face it.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, that's something I also recommend throwing in there because in my experience, saying your keyword in the video has more of an impact than having it in the description or as a tag.
That's something else.
And if you already make like what happens is, for example, like the guy that helped Dan, I'm sure that helped, but a lot of times in my experience, it doesn't help as much because the video doesn't have the keyword said in it. So you can definitely help, but it's not going to like totally change it because that's set in stone.
That's really interesting.
The Black Hat YouTube SEO guys, they go back and they upload a transcript that includes the keyword even though they don't say it. So like shit, it's because it works. So they really do take that into account.
And I suppose that if you had a bunch of videos up already and you didn't do this, that you could theoretically just tag something on the beginning of the interview, I would imagine. You know what I mean? where you could make a short little 15, 20 seconds and say, hey, welcome to blah, 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 and maybe say the stuff and then integrate it into the video, like as an intro, perhaps?
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
or an outro at the end. Yeah, totally, you could do that.
Something where, like, if you didn't do it and you have a bunch of content, that maybe you could go back, and tag it on.
Yeah,
But,
or do a B-roll.
yeah, exactly.
And then do some audio over it. There's plenty. You don't have to do it much. I mean, I've had keywords videos where I say it once or twice, and it's fine. Versus, I haven't found much of a benefit beyond twice. But
Wow.
0 is where I found that it's not much you can do at that point. Like, the videos have a lot going for them. They're optimized well. They have good watch time, audience retention. Also, YouTube looks at engagement factors like comments and likes and things like that. How many people subscribe after watching your video. But in my experience, if you don't say the keyword or a variation of it in the video, it's going to be tough to rank and show up as a suggested video.
Wow. That's something else.
And that's from my experiments. Like, I don't know. That's from my experience and working with a couple channels to help them. And it's been night and day. And it's something that if I go back and optimize my old videos, YouTube's like, well, how is it about this if you never said it once? It kind of
Right.
you don't have to say the exact. You don't have to be like, this is how to change a tire on a Porsche. But you should, you probably want to say something like that.
I'll tell you what would be interesting is, and this would be an interesting experiment that maybe I'll try. For one of my drum videos, maybe I'll put a little intro where I talk at the beginning of it, and I'll tag it onto the video. So typically what happens with a drum kind of cover video, it starts. The music starts and you start playing. So there's no actual, there's no actual talking at all. So it'd be interesting to tag on, hey guys, it's Michael O'Neill. I just wanted to, share this Maroon 5 video. It's Maroon 5, blah, blah. It's my Maroon 5, blankety blank drum cover. And I really hope you like it, blah, 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 blah. And then tag that onto the video and see if that changes the ranking. That would be interesting.
Hey, I wouldn't be surprised if that helped.
Hey, is there a way to look at YouTube rankings, or you just literally search for it and see what comes up in order?
Yeah, there are some tools, but they're not very good. They're not like with Google where there's tons of great rank tracking tools.
Yeah.
There are some, but I found they're kind of junk. And like I said, the rankings aren't a big deal, so it's not as important as the suggested video.
Yeah. What are your kind of regular go-to tools, just as a guy who's, obviously interested in SEO and YouTube and that kind of thing? What do you use?
Well, for SEO in general, SEMrush is probably my number one tool for any SEO.
Okay.
And what that tool does is it's basically a keyword research tool. But the cool thing about it is, like, with most keyword research tools, you just pop a keyword into it and it gives you a bunch of suggestions.
Yeah.
Right? If you put in Maroon 5, it's going to give you like their songs and maybe some other bands that are similar. But what's cool about SEMrush is you actually put in a competitor's website and it shows you all the keywords they're ranking for. So it takes a lot of the guesswork and thought work out of it because you can just put competitors in and then find keywords that way.
Interesting.
So that's my favorite tool for keyword research. I always start with SEMrush.
Okay. Are there any places you recommend that you kind of endorse, I'm air quoting, for getting SEO work? Other than, of course, than backlinko.com in terms of, getting info. Like Upwork, or is there anything we could do to know we're finding the right kind of person to help us with it?
That's a good question. I get that a lot. My recommendation from doing this for a while is not to hire anybody because, most agencies, like, literally, this is sad, but 99% are terrible. And at best case scenario, they don't do anything and you're just the same as you were when you eventually fire them. But in most cases, they actually do more harm than good. Okay. It's a sad reality. SEO space, as you know, is like not full of the most reputable folks, myself excluded. And, that's how it is. So I actually recommend people learn SEO on their own. You could always hire someone down the road, but I recommend at least doing it yourself a little while, because if you just hire someone to like SEO your site and you don't know you don't know if they're doing a good job, you can't really evaluate their work.
I think that way for everything. I think you should do it yourself before you outsource anything. Do you know Andy Crestodina?
Yeah, I like him. He's cool.
And his blog is awesome. I had him on a few weeks ago, and his blog about SEO is just is great as well. So I think between the two of you guys, you probably learn everything you need to know if you don't want to outsource anybody.
Pretty much. And Andy also has a great video on the Orbit Media YouTube channel about how to use Google Analytics to get more traffic. It's one of my favorite SEO videos. So I would check that out too.
Yeah, I had him a few weeks ago, and he, after the show, after we recorded, he was like, let's have a look at your analytics. And we literally screen shared, and he walked me through some stuff, and it was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, he knows a lot about SEO, obviously, but he's a super pro on the analytics stuff and how to actually apply that and not like look at it and be like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. It's just making it super simple and being like, it says this, so you should do that. I've learned a lot from that guy.
Will you be in the States anytime soon, Brian?
Yeah, probably this summer.
What's going on? Any events or anything like that?
No, just it's time to see the family. I haven't been there since Christmas time, so I'd like to go by. And I usually try to stay away from New England. You don't know how it is in San Diego, but from like basically May or April to I like September. To be there from like April to September. It's nice. Other than that, it's best to stay away. Not like Germany's too much
for
better.
a while, so I get it.
Yeah, it's just not nice, not a great place to be. So I go back for Christmas usually, and then I stop 1 or 2 times in the summer.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you find your way out to the West Coast, it'd be fun to sit down and have a drink or something. Likewise,
man. If you ever want to come out here, look at some cars, have a beer, a giant beer at a beer garden.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I'd have one of the pretzels. I love those pretzels too.
Yeah, that's like a Bavarian thing. They're hanging off the wooden post.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. That's cool. Backlinko, Backlinko. He's at Backlinko on the Twitters and backlinko.com. Brian, it's been a little slice of heaven, dude. This is cool, man. It was cool to meet you.
Yeah, likewise, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, you've now just listened to episode 5. What'd I say, 70? Jeez. Holy Toledo. 570 of the Solopreneur Hour. Thanks to HostGator for sponsoring the show. Go visit Brian at backlinko.com. And, you guys, let's go out there. Have yourselves a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Solopreneur Hour podcast. Connect with us on Facebook at facebook.com/solohour, on Twitter at solohour, and of course at solohour.com.
Michael, you're so naughty.